Namaste and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, show on India's national broadcaster Doordarshan about Indian foreign policy, India's international relations, India's major strategic partnerships, and how India is making the world a better place through conscious and deliberate actions. Viewers, in this episode, we are taking up a very pivotal relationship of India, a core strategic partnership, something that's going to be defining India's strategic autonomy and growth in the time to come. This is with the Republic of France. France-India, we are celebrating 25 years of the strategic partnership from 1998 to 2023, and it's a momentous occasion to look at this fundamental building block of Europe-Asia relations and where India and France are headed and what they're doing together and what kind of impact they are having on our region. So to discuss this, viewers, I have a very special guest, great scholar, diplomat. Let me introduce you to him, Ambassador Mohan Kumar. Ambassador Mohan Kumar is a former Indian ambassador to France and to Bahrain, and noted scholar diplomat. He has published a major book on the World Trade Organization. He has represented India on international trade negotiations, and he's a specialist on multilateralism and economic diplomacy. It's a real honor to have you here, Ambassador Mohan Kumar.
Thank you very much, Professor Chaulia. It's good to be on your fantastic show. Thank you for having me.
Ambassador Kumar, France and India, you have been ambassador there, and you have been witness to the rise of this special strategic partnership. And 25 years, if you look back, one wonders what is it that the glue that has really cemented this bond so much, and why is it that, I mean, India has almost 30 or more strategic partnerships formally signed, but the one with France is so robust, and it generates a lot of positive vibes on both sides. So I'd like you to start by reflecting on what is it about France and India that makes it so special and so unique, and why is it that we seem to be converging so much compared to many of the so-called strategic partnerships we have, which are more on paper, but this one is a really powerful strategic partnership that's delivering results for both sides. So why is it that France matters to India and vice versa?
So thank you for that question. I think you'll have to go back to 1998 when we conducted the nuclear tests, and literally we were declared a pariah by the Western world. No Western country sent an envoy to France, sent an envoy to India, and they did not receive anybody from India. It is at that time that the late President Jacques Chirac said that we cannot not have a relationship with the other Asian giant. When he said the other Asian giant, he was referring to India. So I think it's good to remember that at a time when the entire world shunned India following the nuclear test, it was France which decided not only to receive a delegation from India, but also establish the strategic partnership. And this is the 25th anniversary, as you rightly said, of that strategic partnership. The other reason is that, as you said, we've got 30-odd strategic partnerships. I can think of no other strategic partnership in which the philosophical underpinnings of the foreign policy is the same. France has an independent foreign policy, so do we. France practices strategic autonomy, so do we. France seeks a multipolar world, so do we. In fact, I used to joke to my French friends, they have a white paper on foreign policy, which we don't have. I used to tell them, just translate the French into English and it will become an Indian white paper on foreign policy. So I think there are several reasons why there is a comfort factor, there is a certain reliability factor. And if you indulge me, Professor Chaulia, just a 1-minute story. I was packing my bags in 2017 as Indian ambassador to Paris when I got a call from the Prime Minister's office, and they said that Prime Minister Modi would like to come and meet with the young leader of France who has just been elected. And I was wondering, where is the urgency, because we could have met him in due course. The Prime Minister said, no, I would like to meet him at the first opportunity. And as it happened, he was the first non-European leader to set foot in Paris to meet with President Macron. And since then, the personal relationship between Prime Minister Modi and President Macron has blossomed. I can say without fear of contradiction that there are only two leaders who were very, very close to Prime Minister Modi. One was the late Japanese leader Abe. The other is President Macron. So there are lots of reasons why India has a comfort factor with France. France does not practice I love you not kind of policy. It's not that 5 years I don't supply weapons to you, then I supply to you. And if you tell a country like France that, listen, we have sensitivities with regard to Pakistan and others, France gets it. So, Professor Chaulia, a variety of reasons why there is a tremendous degree of comfort, reliability and strategic convergence between these two great countries.
Ambassador Kumar, you've already touched on the personal chemistry between Prime Minister Modi and President Macron. And like you said, ideas, ideology and common vision, I think it's hard to find a better match in world politics, and some people call it a bromance. But the point is, how much, I mean, you have observed at close quarters these two leaders, and obviously they hold each other in very high regard, and it's a very, very friendly, personally friendly relationship. How much of this really matters? I mean, our viewers would like to know always, is this just showmanship by the top leaders, or actually does it matter that they are so much in sync with each other? What do you, as the implementers of the foreign policy, what is the signal you get from the top when you see that the political bosses are so tight with each other?
Countries, their presidents, their diplomats will work for their national interest. No question about it. So you should expect President Macron to defend French national interest, and Prime Minister Modi will, of course, defend India's national interest. But I want to make it abundantly clear to your viewers that really it makes a huge difference if there is personal chemistry between the leaders. The personal chemistry matters on issues where the bureaucrats and diplomats are not able to resolve the issues, and they get kicked up to the leader's level, and then the leader takes a decision based on national interest and leaves aside the other bureaucratic sensitivities and the bureaucratic hurdle. France has a bureaucracy as much as we do. So I think the leader's personal chemistry and relationship matters hugely. And this has been shown time and again in the relationship between countries.
Absolutely. So viewers, personal chemistry, strategic convergence, all of this adds up to a very, very dynamic and fast growing France-India relationship. The strongest pillar in this has always been defense and military ties. And this is what sets apart France-India, because it's truly quote unquote strategic, unlike so many others. Let's hear from the French ambassador to India, Emmanuel Lenin, about the Charles de Gaulle, one of their aircraft carriers off the coast of Goa, Western India, talking about the defense partnership and why sky is the limit and why France is so eager to build India's defense industrial capacity. Let's hear him and continue the discussion.
Obviously, we have a great cooperation on strategic issues with your country, with India, and there's a great level of trust, the sort of trust that makes it possible for countries to commit over years, over decades, and to launch successful defense equipment program. So that is for sure, and we have seen many in the last years. We've seen obviously the successful delivery of the 36 Rafale for the Air Force, and we've seen many others. And I must stress that no other country is so much committed to making available to Indian forces the best technologies without restrictions, and so much able to not only to go to do Make in India, but also to go further to co-develop and co-produce equipment. I think our governments at the top level have really understood the vision of Atmani Barbarat, and they really want to be partner in that process to build a national industrial basis for defense industries in India. And we understand that also because we are a highly independent country and we've been through that process also. That being said, I mean it's good that we do. I mean, India is looking to diversify its suppliers, and obviously, I think that France is a great option, and we're working on major equipment cooperation together.
So viewers, you just heard from the French ambassador to India about why France, he says France was also in a similar stage in its strategic evolution, and therefore they identify with India, which is also trying to build a strong indigenous defense base. So coming back to Ambassador Mohan Kumar, Ambassador Kumar, the French willingness to share technology, to co-develop with us, and their market share in our defense sector has also risen to 29%, that as per the last count, second only to our old long-time supplier Russia. And I wouldn't be surprised if one day France overtakes Russia, the way we are trying to diversify. So what is it, why are the French so forthcoming with India's defense needs, and why are they more willing to share with us the advanced, high-tech, sensitive technologies, and there's so many deals that have been signed and are going to be announced. So in that sense, what is it about France and its willingness to beef up India's military muscle?
So I think you'll have to go back to the reasons I mentioned about strategic convergence between the two countries. I believe that France genuinely is committed to the strategic autonomy of India. They feel that France's defense industry can contribute to strategic autonomy, to Atmanirbhar Bharat. It is the only country which I have watched closely that has evolved from a buyer-seller relationship to technology transfer, partial, to full technology transfer, to co-production, and now we are talking in terms of co-development. This visit by the Prime Minister for the 14th of July on Champs-Élysées with the armed forces is not just symbolic. Of course it is symbolic, but I think it's very, very substantive. It shows the arrival of France and India on the multilateral stage at a time when the world is uncertain, with the conflict in Ukraine, with China's not so peaceful rise. So I see France now, especially with the deal that has been signaled about Safran trying to co-develop a fighter engine. That is huge, because we are really moving from the 1950s and 60s when France supplied the engines for the Chetak helicopter, for the Uragan, Tufani aircraft. I think we have come a long way. Through this journey, the one thing that stands out is France's reliability, the kind of latest technology transfer which was evident with the Scorpion submarines, and a real willingness to contribute to India's strategic autonomy. So I think it's a strategic partner like no other when it comes to defense.
Right. And obviously defense is closely linked to geopolitics, and on this, Ambassador Kumar, we often hear from President Macron himself and from the system in France that they are committed to preventing any one country from dominating the Indo-Pacific. And they of course also have islands and strategic footprint in the Indian Ocean region, and increasingly the navies of the two sides have been cooperating at a very high strategic level. So on this front, you already mentioned China as well. I'd like your views on whether France is really committed to preventing this dominance of China in the region, or do you think they are still hedging or fence sitting on this matter? Because when President Macron went to China, there were a lot of confusion about what exactly France really is signaling. Does it really want to counterbalance China, at least in the IOR, if not in the broader Indo-Pacific? Or is France not so willing to do so? And if so, how will that help India? Because capabilities, yes, you already mentioned all these amazing deals and advanced weaponry. France is enabling India's capabilities. But in terms of operational, action, and to be able to join hands with India, with the Quad countries, and with other like-minded countries in the region, how far do you think France is willing to go on this front in terms of geopolitically being a balancer? I mean, when you hear the French military officials, they often say this, that we want to restore balance of power in the Indian Ocean region, and that's why we are here, and that's why we are cooperating with India. But is that so? You think the system is it committed to this, or are they still primarily focused on Europe and the security of Europe, and that they don't care as much about this region? What is your reading?
So I think we should be clear-headed about two things, that is France's relationship with China and France's role in the Indo-Pacific. And if you allow me, I'll address these issues one by one. With regard to China, I think we should be clear that our current relationship with China is not mirrored by France's relationship with China. France has a relationship with China which is completely different. They are joined at the hip when it comes to trade and investment. So it's very difficult for France, forget about decoupling, even de-risking will be a problem for France vis-a-vis China. And this is something we should appreciate, which is why, as you rightly said, Professor Chaulia, the statement made by President Macron was at variance with the European Commission President von der Leyen when both of them visited China. However, when it comes to the maritime theater that is known as Indo-Pacific, France is got a completely different perspective. They subscribe to a rules-based international order in the maritime theater. They believe that there must be a multipolar Indo-Pacific. Most people don't appreciate that France has got the largest real estate in Indo-Pacific.
Right.
Absolutely, and the largest exclusive economic zone to boot. They have bases there. They have allowed the use of bases in Reunion Islands by India, which is amazing. And therefore, when it comes to Indo-Pacific, for example, we have the Information Fusion Center in Gurgaon. The first country to post a naval liaison officer was France. So I think we have to be clear, while on the land border with China, we are on our own. And we should not expect boots on the ground from any other country. I think in the maritime theater, especially the Indian Ocean, because the United States is heavily invested in the Pacific theater.
Yeah.
But the Indian Ocean, I was at a conference in Shanghai when Professor Chaulia, a Chinese scholar, said, it is only Indian Ocean, it is not India's ocean. And this was very interesting for me. And therefore, we need partners like France. China has maintained a semi-permanent presence in the Indian Ocean from 2008 onwards. If we want to have real maritime domain awareness, we need countries like France. Indeed, I see the Franco-Indian relationship as a hub for the Indian Ocean. And I see us working in close coordination with Quad. We should not expect France to be a member of the Quad. I don't think they will be. But I think France realizes the importance of keeping Indian Ocean completely based on a rules-based order with freedom of navigation, freedom of overflight patrols, because 60 to 70% of trade goes through the Indian Ocean for the European Union. So it is in France's natural interest to keep the Indo-Pacific theater free from any hegemony. And that is a goal that I think India shares with the France in the Indo-Pacific.
Absolutely. So, viewers, Ambassador Mohan Kumar is reminding us that China-France may have a very strong commercial relationship, But when it comes to defense and military and security, actually it's India and France. It's the most happening partnership. But it's not only military and defense and geopolitics. There is an emerging growth areas potential in economic partnership between France and India. And on this, I'd like you to hear from Javed Ashraf, India's ambassador to France, talking about the limitless possibilities in the various sectors in which France and India can work together in order to advance the trade and investment relationship, which has been a bit of an underperformer but is likely to go higher with the strategic guidance from the leaderships of both sides. Let's hear the Indian ambassador to France.
Whether it was a round table, whether it was the plenary, whether it was the one-on-one meeting, and it covered virtually every industry. From food processing to agriculture to defense to information technology to health, infrastructure, clean energy. In every sector, the only message that came was we want to do more in India. We want to do more business with India. And it isn't just because of the market in India. They also say that in today's world, because of the geopolitical tensions, you need to do business with people who you count as your friends, who you are comfortable with. This is India's strength. It isn't just our market, it isn't just our growth, it isn't just our talent, it isn't just the rapid growth in infrastructure, the digitalization, or the expansion or the reforms that we are taking place. It is also the comfort of shared values of democracy. It is well regarded that India respects international law, that it doesn't assert claims on others. And the fact that we have that political comfort and trust enables business in today's world, which is increasingly being shaped, where economic choices are increasingly being shaped by geopolitics, gives India a unique advantage. So the message that he got today from everyone across every sector and from Minister Olivier Beche was simply this: there is no boundaries, there are no limits to how much India and France, and through France, how much Europe and India can do together. And that we can become a force. Remember, we are 1.8 billion people living in democracy and living in shared values. Together we can achieve a lot. And this is the message that the industry and the government both conveyed to him today.
So viewers, India's ambassador to France talking about how, because of the trust factor and because of the democracy and the geopolitical closeness, the possibilities for trade relations are likely, are likely to expand. Coming back to you, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, you are an expert on trade, and of course we have booming trade relationships with many countries. But France, the volumes have not been as high. It's still less than $20 billion per annum is a bilateral trade, and two-ways investment also is not excessive, but there is potential. Prime Minister has met so many of the French industry leaders. Our commerce minister has gone, and there are all these roundtables and business one-on-ones that are being organized by our embassy in Paris. What will it all add up to? Because there is a danger of the relationship being confined to only defense, right? That's what we saw with Russia, for example. It was only defense and to an extent oil and gas, and there was no other leg. And that makes it probably a thinner strategic relationship than one which is more broad-based, like we have with the US. And we'd like the same with France. And so how can we do that? And what are the sectors you are looking at where we can focus our energies and expand the civilian side of the exchanges?
So, Professor Chaulia, you are spot on when you say that without the ballast of trade and investment, you cannot sustain a strategic partnership just on the basis of defense. I would underline two things. One, we have embarked on a very ambitious free trade agreement with the European Union, not with France alone, but with the European Union. It bears mentioning to your audience that trade competence does not lie with France alone. It lies with the Commission. It is the Commission which determines EU policy on trade. for all the 27 countries. So while France has an important say in the matter, ultimately it is Brussels which decides. Keeping this in mind, India has embarked on a negotiation. I want to put it very clearly to your audience that this is the most critical FTA that India is negotiating with anybody. The FTA with EU is absolutely critical. That will take care of the problem that you talked about, which is the lack of trade relationship with France and so on. The second aspect is what we can do with France. And there I want to tell your viewers that a couple of years ago, Prime Minister Modi and President Macron decided on a roadmap for digital technology. And that includes things like 6G, quantum computing, artificial intelligence. And I think India and France will be well advised to really put this roadmap into action. I understand from what has happened yesterday in the talks between Prime Minister Modi and President Macron that there are some decisions which have been made with regard to critical emerging technology and critical minerals. And this is fantastic for both countries because both India and France can do a lot. For example, in the area of climate change, hydrogen is an area that has been underlined by both leaders in the conversation that they had yesterday. And hydrogen is really the future when it comes to combating climate change. If we can get France's help and others' help to make India the hub for green hydrogen, that will go a long way. So I'm excited by the new areas of cooperation, green hydrogen, 6G, artificial intelligence, quantum computing. But when it comes to basic trade, my feeling is we have to wrap up the FTA negotiations with EU, and we need to seek the help and cooperation of France. It's true that France cannot swing it all by itself, but at least we should make sure that we take care of France's concerns so that France can then provide us support vis-a-vis other European countries to make sure that we finish the FTA as quickly as possible.
Right. So viewers, the France-India relationship is, of course, has got broader ramifications for India's relationship with the entire European Union. The trade and commerce certainly is an area that we are looking forward to, from space and nuclear energy, which have been there in the past. Now, Ambassador Mohan Kumar just talked about many cutting-edge new areas and new fields on which agreements are being signed, and we are now going to implement this joint vision. So, think about France as a trusted partner which is enabling India in so many areas and in which we have high hopes, and certainly it's never disappointed India, and we look forward to many more years of this special partnership going forward and surging ahead. I want to thank Ambassador Mohan Kumar for sharing valuable insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Chaulia, for having me.
Viewers, France and India, I think, will definitely come in the top 5 strategic partnerships India has around the world, and it's very much on the anvil, the kind of upward trajectory that we are seeing as a result of the investment by both sides in so many areas of convergence. Let's keep an eye on France-India strategic partnership. It's not an exaggeration to say that this is one of the defining strategic partnerships of the 21st century, as much as it is India's partnership with the US or with the other Quad partners. Let's keep an eye out on France, and let's support France because they support us so much. I want to thank you all for joining me on the show, and see you again next time. Until then, take care.